afternoon. I know it's getting towards the end of the day, but I think we've got an exciting panel ahead of us right now. So quickly, I will introduce the panelists. Immediately next to me is Szymon, who is a digital transformation expert who hails from PKO Bank. David Galbraith, who is a partner at VC firm Anthemis. And then we've got Dominika Stępińska-Duch, who is the head of legal at the newly merged, let me get this right, TVN Warner Brothers Discovery, which really rolls off the tongue now. And last and not least, we've got Artur Kurcweil, who shares an amazing name with Ray Kurzweil, very excited, but with a C to differentiate. And he's the chief, I've missed my notes now. Chief Technology Officer and also Bank PKO. So thank you very much for joining me. We've got an interesting topic in that we're going to be asking, how do we build digital organizations in an uncertain future? And I want to start really by addressing what I would say is the elephant in the room, which is the fact that, up until, say, 10 years ago, everything seemed very clear, or maybe even more than 10 years, when it was 2008 now, 12 years ago. 14 years, my God. Anyway, so I can't count, this is embarrassing. Everything seemed very clear cut, and then all this uncertainty hit us. But it coincides with digital transformation. So to what degree is the digital transformation itself a catalyst for some of the uncertainty that we have been seeing these last few years? Who would like to go first addressing that question? Go ahead. Szymon.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. I do agree that we are at the very early stage of digital transformation, and as some people claim, we are just 1% done, which means there's a hell lot of to really change and improve. And if we look at the elephant in the room, the way I see it is that, looking at the history, we had inventions ranging from mass production, from electricity, and it all improved productivity and led to the creation of wealth. If you look at the last 10, 15 years, we have digital advancements, but there is no improvement in productivity globally. And we look at Western Europe, especially, we have a drastic drop in productivity, which means, in my view, the missing element of digital is that, okay, we create more data, we create more functionalities, but we are not making the world better in the sense that there is more productivity and we eliminate the inequalities. And what we're seeing in Western Europe is especially touches the middle class that is getting poorer and poorer each generation.
David, what's your view? Do you think there's an element of truth there that we have disregarded digital transformation has somehow overlooked the middle classes?
In rich countries, it's like two glasses of water, and if you have inequality in both, we've reduced inequality globally more than at any other time in history. But in rich countries, the middle class has been hollowed out. So unfortunately what's happening now with the reactions is it's going to affect poor people everywhere. And so I think that the counter reaction against digital, which we're currently going through, is going to be much more painful, actually.
And obviously there are, regulatory concerns when technology does things that, surprise us all. There's always a pushback. As a legal expert and someone who looks at regulation, where do you think the biggest uncertainties are at the moment in terms of how we proceed with this digital transformation?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the question, Izabella. I think that, we live in extremely interesting times for lawyers, and obviously the law is not prepared for the digital revolution. It is never up to speed, and I think that there is a tremendous challenge for lawyers nowadays to actually understand the digital world. There are not many that actually speak the same languages as engineers or IT people. So I think that the challenge lies in, first of all, predicting the future, second of all, understanding the future, And third of all, finding out how to apply the laws and the regulations that we have in our reality, how to apply them into the virtual reality, how to protect data, how to delete data, how to secure data. I know that we will be speaking about cybersecurity later, but there is I think that the biggest challenge is that we are never up to speed and we never know enough. And we have to protect the companies against the risks, but we don't really know what risks can come because the digital is so unpredictable. So it's challenging, but it's fascinating.
So obviously one area where, definitely you can say there's a lot of unpredictable, trends is in cybersecurity. The criminals are always more innovative than the users. And it's always when I think there's a certain level of complacency that we've found ways to secure things that the unexpected happens, and there's an exploit from an area a blind spot, so to speak, that we didn't see. Do you think that this is an inevitable part of digitization? Will we ever be able to cover all these bases, or is it going to be an eternal struggle just catching up with the creative element that undermines the digital transformation?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this question. This is it must be in the context of entire situation which happened last couple of years. First we had pandemic, then we had a war in Ukraine, which changed completely the landscape around us, which means that there are new behaviors of the people, new behaviors of the customers, and new behaviors also of employees and all of us, which means that we are bringing new vulnerabilities to the criminals, and also criminals are, this is like a race between protecting ourselves and criminals who are employing also machine learning, artificial intelligence, and who are looking for the easiest and the cheapest ways how to get our money, or how to get our credentials, or how to compromise our data. So the situation is changing completely, but the complicator, which brings a lot of volatility here, is the factor that we are changing our behaviors. There are no the same patterns like we had 5 years ago, or the same tools, or the same even solutions which were future-oriented are not really proving themselves in the current time. So we have to be even more innovative than our criminals, but usually, frankly speaking, this is more reactive than proactive, because those guys are focused on this topic.
Yeah, I would like to comment on that. Before I joined TVN, actually I was a defense lawyer, specializing in criminal defense and cybersecurity also. And I think that what we need to look at is that crisis always stimulates crime. It always creates a new environment for crime. And what we observe is that, as you said, there is a lot of criminal behaviors, and we cannot anticipate them. We don't know how to protect them, the companies against them. And even what we discussed this morning, the artificial intelligence is maybe not enough to protect the companies. I think that the artificial intelligence must be combined with human factor and with a better understanding of what is going on in that new environment.
David?
Yeah, I think it's not just bad actors, but we're creating systems which have, when people write software, they talk about technical debt, which is you write software quickly on top of other software, and you're not sure what you've done. You don't understand it fully. With AI, nobody understands what's been done. Nothing is codified. And so we are creating systems now whose vulnerabilities are increasing non-linearly with their productivity, if you like. And I think this is actually part of what might be happening with the productivity, is that the productivity gain is linear, but the vulnerability and the exposure to all sorts of risk is actually now scaling non-linear. I'll give a couple of trivial examples. Is defense contractors who normally look at systemic risk in systems analyzed modern cars, like electric vehicles, and even the lighting system in an electric car is now at a sufficient complexity to have systemic risk. And so we're creating systems that are unnecessarily complicated.
Okay, trying to be a little bit more optimistic, and look, we should break down a little bit of the problems that we need to tackle as digital leaders and divide it. So first of all, I'm a big optimist about digital because digital has the power and the capabilities to democratize many services that in the past were limited only to few. And especially in financial services, the richer data, the digital interface, and the use of data can provide a really personalized advice. And to the extent, and there I see several of my friends from various banks that lead the digital, so we should really try to make sure that people are smarter about their money and that digital is bringing good, better decisions, better money handling, and better management, especially in the times of high inflation. And this is also the challenge for leaders that I would like to see that they actually taking the customer care seriously. And not only push sales of products. Second issue that I'm seeing that needs to be properly addressed, and this is an issue that I'm fan of together with Bianca Lopez, which is open data economy. We have really inequalities in the way how this data about us is being handled. And I'm a strong believer that the future should be about open data economy and consumers being owners of their data. And they could use it wherever they want to use it, but only at their consent. And then the third problem is actually as you addressed, is the use of algorithms and to what extent we should allow algorithms to make final decisions vis-a-vis knowing that there are big deficiencies in the way they can interpret sometimes data that needs to be interpreted in order to make a right call.
So this is a good segue into a topic that is close to my heart, which is obviously the moderation of content online. And, as a journalist, I think we have a certain perspective that this job for years was done by human minds and editorial processes that could subjectively analyze the content. And with Facebook, with Twitter, etc., so much of that moderation has been outsourced to algorithms. Are we now at a point, though, where it's becoming... we've reached the limitations on that front, because it seems to me that with the creation of Facebook's editorial boards, we're having to bring the humans back into this process, and that in itself is a sort of a counter to the uncertainty that just outsourcing to algorithms brought into the system. Dominika, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that we have a huge social responsibility as to the accuracy of the news. Because digital, I agree with you, and I see it as a big, of course, challenge and opening and perspective, and it leads to more equality in the world, and no doubt about it. However, never, ever before, news was spread around at such a speed as it is spread around today. And again, looking at the pandemic, looking at the war in Ukraine, and all the horrible things that are going around, there is no worse enemy than fake news. And the question that I am asking myself, and I pretty much think that I'm remaining traditional in my opinions, is that we cannot rely on algorithms and artificial intelligence when it comes to news. That fact-checking is still extremely important, and that our social responsibility towards people that we have to educate when it comes to vaccines, when it comes to the attack on, of Russia on Ukraine, it's our responsibility as leaders to make sure that the news that we spread around, especially in business such as ours, are verified and true. And this, in my opinion, at this stage, cannot yet be done without the human touch.
David?
I talk not just at the moderation level, but what do we mean when we say digital? We're largely talking not just about digital. Well, Microsoft was a digital company, but it wasn't an internet company. The internet is the structural change that is as profound as, let's say, the invention of the printing press. With the printing press, you suddenly had one-to-many relationships, and that changed the way information flowed. It created the Reformation, as we talked about earlier. Now you have infinite channels. Everyone has a channel. And the way that network looks, and at the moment we know that that network, let's say on Twitter, is far too dense, propagates lies, because there are an infinite number of lies and there's a finite number of truths. And the very nature of the network will favor lies till it settles down into a new state. And we know what that new state is. It will be a small world network, which is the sort of Goldilocks between what we had previously and what we have now, which is things are too connected, where things balkanize a bit. We were seeing it emerge in places like Reddit, for example. And so I think that's more of an important issue, is the stable configuration of the network rather than how we moderate it, because we can't moderate this away till it reaches that stable state.
I love this idea that lying is exponential and truth isn't. I mean, it's a fantastic way to see the world. But like just bringing it back to cybersecurity, because these days it's not just about hackers, it's also about social engineering, right? So, and the uncertainty in the digital landscape is about hacking people's minds as much as it is hacking, you know, the passwords or whatever. How do we become resilient to that sort of scale of uncertainty when it comes to disinformation or even, you know, the tricks that cyber criminals use is another form of disinfo, right, when it comes to social engineering?
Well, the weakest part of the chain is always human being. That's
problem is always the human.
Yes, and this is, unfortunately, this is true. We observe our customers, and you can't believe how easy it is to get credentials from the customers if you prepare good scripts and if you prepare the social attack very, very sophisticated way. The first call is from the guy who is from security, but he identifies number of potential vulnerabilities. The second guy is confirming that the previous guy called regarding this topic, and the third guy is taking the credentials from the customers. So, and this is really extremely easy if you know the patterns, if you know human beings, if you identify the potential victim of your cyber crime. What is more dangerous in terms of further development of the social media is, for example, deep fake. Once I get your probe, I get probe of your voice, of your face, of your movement, of your piece of speaking, I can produce the content which will pretend you. So you are probably very sensitive once you receive the call from someone who you don't know. But if the call is from someone who you know, who faced this person a couple of times during your life, the person speaks the same way as you know this person, it's easy to get in trap.
I'm pretty sure this is a plot line in Terminator 2. Yes, when T-1000 pretends to be a relative. But I mean, in terms of...
So we've all predicted already, right?
It was all predicted. But in terms of obviously in terms of banking, I'm also interested in to what degree are we taking these sort of, systems for granted, especially in terms, you're an optimist, right? And you can see the great good that these systems are doing. But in banking especially, is there a blind spot in that sometimes a bit of friction, a bit of resilience is actually important for banking security, because it's that moment where you have to think twice. In the UK, we now have extra layering, so there's a little pop-up message that says, "Are you sure you want to send this money to this account?" And it's actually the opposite of efficiency. It's a constructed inefficiency to help you pause for thought. So is there an imbalance? Will there eternally be a sort of force between yin and yang? Move one way, it goes too efficient, then we have to move back, slow down.
I think it's always will be a struggle, because the way we're seeing also the fintech development, taking a little bit from a different angle, why some fintechs are actually selecting certain locations in Europe, to set their operations. It's a little bit to what extent the local regulator is allowing more and more freedom to build up some services. And my discussions with local Polish regulators, they call it clearly, it's a race to the bottom. How far can you go? And the global order that we all discussed this morning, I mean, should be that the rules should be equal, at all markets, and they should not differ. So, you know, the order in regulating whether it's access to personal data or usage of data for algorithms, or then, you know, what is allowed in banking or in medical digital services, I think should be equalized. So we need to advance in order to catch up with this technological advancement. And
isn't that quite hard in a world that is so unequal?
it's extremely hard, because if you think about it, I mean, look, whatever can be
Because
can be
expecting the same
digitized will be
standards in
digitized.
India is
Whatever
very
is
different from
digitized
possible.
will be connected. So with IoT, 5G, cloud, we will have an enormous amount of data in the near future. So what we're seeing right now is just the beginning, and the fact that the data will be about our everyday activities, you know, requires regulation, or at least some boundaries, so consumers feel safe.
David?
I mean, definitely we're seeing 4 fundamentally different internet models emerge now in China, India, Europe, and the US. There's 4 different payment rails and then there are 3 different open banking standards in the UK, Europe, and then America. So I think, and even in terms of regulation, looking at, let's say, the US, which favors interchange fees are different for startups, for incumbents, so it nurtures more startups, which is why it's very hard actually for, in a low interest rate environment, for fintechs to operate in Europe with the same benefits as they do in the US in terms of transactions. I think these imbalances are sometimes important. Yeah, I think it's important to have varied regulations, because the environment is not homogeneous.
Right, so that's a contradiction, right?
Yeah,
Dominika.
I would agree with you that local customs and even the particularity of certain regions implies a certain differentiation between the markets. And I think it's the same with compliance. You cannot find one rule that will apply to China, the US, and Europe, because people are just different. And we don't have time for discussion about globalization, but I think that that's not the direction that we should,
Right.
aim at.
For as long as there are differences, there's always going to be arbitrage and regulatory arbitrage.
Absolutely.
And that's where the unknowns, you know, to quote Donald Rumsfeld, right? You know, there are known unknowns and unknown unknowns, or whatever. You know, my publication is called The Blind Spots. I'm very much into this whole idea of unknown unknowns. But it's hard to, you know, the whole point of an unknown is that you can't see it coming. So just because we're just finishing up now, where do you think, you know, obviously I'm not going to ask you to predict the next big crisis point that might come out of digitization, but where do you think where do you have an inkling, where might we be overlooking certain risks? Where are they building up maybe? Artur, maybe you start.
We need to try to build up some patterns. I don't believe in tools. I don't believe in vaccinations. I strongly believe in the patterns which will allow us to control the situation, how it develops. And once we are able to observe the trends using, for example, artificial intelligence, then we are able to try to protect ourselves against those new coming unexpected future. This is the only way to observe trends and try to analyze and find with the conclusion which will bring us closer to the protection, but never you have 100% of chance to be protected.
I'm a strong advocate that we need to solve globally digital identity. And once we solve it, I think there is a world of new opportunities for us as consumers and also for businesses to, you know, rethink the processes that we have today. And, you know, that will be a game changer not only for banks, but for most businesses if we solve it. And the example we've discussed, I think, DIA, I mean, shows what, you know, moving, let's say, administration into a digital sphere can mean for a country that is during a war, and there, you know, Ukrainians can find their birth certificates, their digital passports using digital services. But again, we need to solve it at the European and then hopefully global level, that we can use digital identity for our good.
in terms of the unknown unknowns, is there a risk that these identity systems might actually be used against us? I don't feel like you have to answer that.
No, I
particular
just
question.
wanted to say at the end, because I know we have 5 seconds, that I strongly believe in education. And I think that our goal really and our mission as leaders should be to educate people that the digital actually gives a lot of, provides a lot of risks for people, stealing identity, etc. And we must educate.
And David, you have the last word.
I'll say I am an optimist, and I'm an optimist in the sense that I think, look, when we had the broadcast era, the sort of evolution of the printing press, it meant that you had popular culture and Hollywood movies and things like that, where the masses had more purchasing power than, let's say, an opera house or something like that. I think the digital era enhances that on the creative side as well as the consumption side. You need things to appeal to the masses, and so all of the exploitation and the inequality we're seeing, there is an optimistic angle, which is you cannot build digital era businesses unless you serve fundamentally lots and lots of people.
Brilliant. Great closing thought there. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely afternoon. Thank you.